So how do we do it? So it's, as I mentioned, part of the collaboration we have with TNFD is we are using a process that IBAT and TNFD have standardized on. It's called the LEAP process. So it's pretty intuitive, but we can walk through it. The first thing you do is you have to locate what you're looking at. Now we are put your asset manager hat on, and you're looking at each portfolio. So the first thing you have to do when you're constructing a portfolio is create a geospatial map of all the company's locations, and then identify how close they are. What's the proximity of each of the company's assets or locations to each of the key biodiversity areas that we are mentioning right here. The second thing you have to do is you have to evaluate your dependencies. So you have to find the connection between a certain type of asset, which if you're in the materials industry, in the metals and mining industry, it might be an iron ore mine. And how does that iron ore mine impact water stress? Because mining, as we know, is a very water intensive industry. For each million ton of ore you produce, it uses, I think 5 to 10 million gallons. It's a very high number, right? When you're evaluating companies, one of the things you want to do, obviously, is focus on as wide a berth as possible when selecting the companies. So it's important to mention here that we cover, ESG Signals covers the world's 3,000 largest companies. We cover the MSCI ACWI Index, which is around 3,000 companies, both the developing world and the developed and the developing world. The third thing you do after you've evaluated is you have to assess the risks and opportunities. Usually companies will not give you this, right? Companies themselves are getting caught up, as Desi mentioned, with the regulatory requirements, and they don't have tools like this. Our hope here is working with our partners, working with you, we'll be able to showcase some of this to companies, and we'll all be on the same level playing field. So what ESG Signals provides on the opportunities and threats, we'll show you, is at a very detailed proximity level. You can actually jump right in, look at an asset, see how many kilometers away it is, see how it's changed over the last year, 2 years, 3 years. And lastly, that'll help you to do what? It'll help you to prepare. Once you've identified it, then you might use it on a weekly basis, quarterly basis to monitor your portfolio's performance and hopefully actually engage with the constituents of the portfolio, the management of the companies, right? I actually just read a report when we were waiting for you guys. And the report was a very interesting report. It was from World Bank and Finance for Biodiversity Initiative. And it was highlighting the risk of defaults among sovereign states. So, and there was a very interesting analysis. There are 6 countries, very big countries, which are at an increased risk of default just from the loss of biodiversity. Questions, or Desi, shall I go ahead?
You can go ahead, Manish, but anyone who's listening, feel free to also answer our polls that are ongoing, because we're interested to see, does that apply directly to you? Are you having any difficulties with it? Is that a problem you've already addressed? Or maybe because you're a partner, that doesn't apply directly to you, but to people you work with. So check in for our polls. We're going to be releasing it throughout the presentation to hear how you feel about that. You could get going. We don't have any questions right now, but you guys can definitely send some.
Sounds good. So IBAT's a great partner of ours, and it's actually one of our data science team. I have to give a shout out. They found IBAT. We did a partnership with them. Where it's key, what we're bringing to the IBAT data set is we're bringing the whole ecosystem of ESG Signals and Asset Tracker, and we'll walk into how we do it. Why are we using IBAT? As you know, or you may not know, over half of the global GDP is really dependent on a fully functioning and resilient biodiversity ecosystem, right? If you really want to monitor the whole GDP and break it down by company, 11 sectors, and then use it for some investment hypothesis, you have to see how it relates and what are the risks associated with it on each of the 3 key areas that IBAT provides data on. Where we're adding a lot of value is on the geospatial side, and then obviously bringing in the 50 other metrics we have. So with IBAT, what we cover, I think I'm probably going to get it wrong, we cover over 140,000 different red list species. And these species, a lot of their data is updated sometimes on a daily basis, weekly basis. We cover over 200,000 protected areas, which we'll call PAs. And we cover what are called the really big areas, or called KBAs, key biodiversity areas. So we overlay them on, think of it as a geospatial map, and we'll actually show what it looks like to you. The two approaches for doing biodiversity, the one approach which we are using is TNFD, but it's super important to remember, even if there's another approach, UN has an approach called Encore, and we can put some of the links in. It still works, because in the end, what the approaches say is you have to measure stuff at an asset level, and you have to make sure that the data you are using is comparable across companies in the different sectors. And it's temporal, which means I could be comparing the same data from 2020 to 2021 to 2022. And lastly, we actually have one of our advisors here on the call too. There's a very big movement towards biodiversity credits. They're very similar to carbon credits. And this is one of the key areas that we're working on, to actually identify and quantify and rank biodiversity credits. Is a biodiversity credit in a fire risk prone area really as effective as a biodiversity credit in an area with very low fire?